Okay, so we're back. Another episode of Out of the Box podcast. Plenty to talk about this week. Tomorrow I head to America. I'm going to Dallas and then from Dallas on to Austin for a conference on the Monday and Tuesday of next week. So it's exciting. Traveling is always, it's something that's kind of glorified, but it's not that fun as well at the same time in terms of it takes it out of you and you lose days to it, especially when it's long haul like this. But I haven't been away for some time now, maybe 2-3 months. So I'm looking forward to this one. If I was doing it extended periods of time, I wouldn't be too sure about that. The conference I'm going to is Commerce Roundtable, and it's really, I think, probably the best e-commerce conference in the US by far. I haven't been to one in the US before. I went to one Geek Out in Greece last summer and it was excellent, and so it's inspired me to go to this one. It's kind of hosted by the same one half of Geek Out in Nick Shackelford, so that should be fun. And there's a few people who I'm aware of in the industry going, but I don't really know, and a few people I do know who are going, who I've never really met in person, so that'll be fun. I think the main things about going to conferences, I've kind of exhausted the local ones, like the Ecom Lives and stuff like that, although this year it does look like a stacked lineup. I feel like the American ones are always at the kind of like edge of what's possible in e-commerce and pushing the boundaries, and maybe here in the UK and Ireland we're 5 years behind. So by going out there you can really learn and bring that knowledge back. And also with our sales in the US being about 50% of our revenue, it makes sense to kind of soak up the tactics out there. So yeah, I'm excited for that, and I'll probably do a whole video just breaking down what I learned at the conference. It's called Commerce Roundtable, and there's a second one in San Diego the second half of the year, which if this one goes well, I'll look at bringing out some team members with me next time. But yeah, so a couple of things to run through. So I visited a site this week for potential retail/leisure venture. It's pretty exciting. People who own it seem really good and it fits kind of with our core business model. I'm just looking what the numbers will come back, and I'm hoping to get them after this. They said they'd send through an email today, so when they come back we'll either know if it's financially viable or not. We would have to probably take on capital from a traditional bank, and that's where traditional banks are useful for stuff like this when you're opening up bricks and mortar. I don't think kind of progressive banks, let's say like Monzo and Revolut, are good at doing stuff like this. However, I know traditional banks like Danske and Ulster, who are our local ones, but say in the UK you have Halifax or Lloyds or Barclays, do lend for this type of stuff, and we probably would have to take that capital because there would be a lot of upfront capital investment involved in building what we want. But that's just how I see the brand going forward, is that we have to bridge that gap between online and in person, which we are increasingly do with the claw machines, as I touched on many times. On that, I've learned a few things about the US now. So we fixed the UK, and I was actually in a bit of a mental slump this week on the Tuesday. I was really suffering with that. I think it just hit me all at once because the adrenaline maybe wore off from the previous few days, and it was a bit of a Debbie Downer, like not a good mood. But I've got over it now, and we're just moving forward and continuing to get these machines out. In terms of the US, I thought the state laws would be a lot more relaxed, but I guess they aren't, because gambling hasn't really been a thing in the United States. It's been frowned upon for years. Maybe that kind of stereotype that the US is more relaxed in terms of regulation is actually misconceived compared to the UK, because the UK in terms of this instance is more relaxed in regulation, which is surprising. Either ways, both markets are way too overregulated, and it actually does stop innovation. I can see why these like promised government departments like Doge, and I don't know what the British version of it was going to be, spun up, because in the UK and in the US there is way too much red tape that stops people like me trying to innovate. And yes, there will be like downsides for it, which obviously regulation is there to aim to prevent, but I think the positives far outweigh it. Moving onwards from getting a bit too political, I have seen CAC spike a lot this week. So what is CAC, customer acquisition cost? This has spiked really since the start of the month. I was putting it down to maybe macroeconomic impacts, you know, like the wars and stuff like that, but when I dived a bit deeper, talked to a few friends, they were saying yes, CAC's maybe up a little bit, but not as much as you're saying. So then I started working what's a problem on the sites. Now we are running multiple tests, and I've touched on this before, we're testing the shit out of the site. Problem with testing stuff on site, and I've seen a lot of stuff, especially from Mr. Connor Martin on Twitter and a few other people, everyone has a different opinion, and the opinions is always right. Problem with the testing we're doing, because we're doing split testing on site instead of testing in the ad account, is that probably Meta is crawling the pages, and it maybe like has page loading speed and stuff like that affect performance performance of your website, and so I imagine CAC does naturally rise. Now the problem is if you're always testing stuff, your CAC's always high compared to what it really should be as a base level. Now granted, you're testing stuff and you're hoping that the base level rises, I guess, over time. However, for the first 2 weeks of this month, it was pretty grim, our CAC. So we stopped all tests. Now they pretty much all finished, or they hadn't started the new tests. And another thing that we looked at was a pop-up. Now again, we saw someone preaching about it on Twitter that pop-ups are not the done thing. And I thought, anecdotally speaking, I do not like pop-ups, so we turned it off. Now looking at when our CAC has risen, it is in line with the pop-ups. And it does make sense. Yes, pop-ups are fucking awful for the customer experience, but people do sign up to them and they are more likely to buy once they've committed their email, because they are getting that marketing over and over and over and over, and because they have that discount, and that discount motivates them to buy. So yeah, we've reintegrated the pop-up. We're going to A/B test some pop-ups. We had got a bit too into it with the pop-ups before. We were thinking that we would collect a bit of customer data around what their purchasing motivations were, and this is in line with building out our creative tests and with post-purchase surveys. However, when we thought about it a bit more, it probably creates more friction than is necessary, and we're not sure how useful the details that we're collecting are. So for now, we're not going to collect it. However, it's something we may visit down the line because I feel like we need to. Another thing, and this is kind of my last point for this week, that we've been looking at is we've been doing a book club for growth. We have been doing Why Ideas Go Viral. It's written about 20 years ago. It's a really good book, to be fair. However, the one thing I've been looking at recently with regards to this book, and we kind of discussed it, was how do we make customers become advocates for the brand? Now obviously tons of people do this. You can refer a friend and you get X percentage off your order and stuff like that. But how do you get a really high opt-in rate? Because if people do buy a mystery football shirt, they are more likely, they're going to peacock and show off to their mates. So how do you get them to refer on a friend? I think probably post-purchase is the best time to get them. Maybe after arrival is also a good time, but I feel like if they refer on a friend, listen, I've just bought this, you buy it too, and let's see what we get. I feel like that would be really cool. However, I don't know what the most effective offer is and how technically you set it up. Now, we're looking at these things. I think the offer probably, there's a million things you could do. You could do cashbacks and stuff like that. I don't know how effective those are. You could probably do a free product. Again, is that just diluting brand perception if you give a free product? I'm not too sure, but I feel like it's a super good way to get more customers in the door and leverage kind of the systems we already have in place in terms of, if we're already bringing in one customer, how can we make that customer bring in another? So been looking at that and trying to figure out what is the best way to do it. I've seen a lot of stuff about the affiliate programs that Comfort are running and stuff like that. It's something different. It's maybe instead of where you're becoming an advocate, you are actually a creator for the brand. I think that's maybe a separate entrance point. I'm not sure quite how that would work for us without pissing off our subscribers, but it could be something. Anyway, I've been talking a lot. I've got a lot of cool episodes coming up, so thanks for, as always, watching, and I'll be back next week.